Yeah, you already know what it is. Lethal Talent 24, dive bombing at you with some Eagles content. All right, so I just want to kind of go over some things, man. And, there's a lot happening, but there's not really a lot going on in the media. There's no players talking, and that's because we on that bye week. So it's going to be a slow struggle, but we're going to stay on that grind. So a couple things have happened throughout the week with Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson did have the surgery, and this definitely was reported a few days ago. But, it's about time that he got the surgery. We needed him to get that week one, but when you talking about surgery and doctors and they're saying especially it's not guaranteed that it'll be right afterwards. Anytime you go under the knife, it's always a risk. So I can understand why he wanted to have it heal up or see if if it would, but I knew he didn't look right in practice. You could just tell he was in pain. He didn't look right in the game against the Bears, and he re-aggravated it, or I believe John Clark stated that he tore it off the bone. I think it was him. I'm not sure, but that's just So, shout out to him. Hope he gets better, but we're down to wide receiver. Well, another interesting little bit of news there. We re-signed Jordan Matthews. Now, what does that do for us there? He's not exactly a Z receiver. He's not exactly he's not a speedster, but Matthews has honed his skill over time, and it seems like when he left us, he had that knee injury. He went over to the Buffalo Bills, couldn't really do too much. He was released by them. And then went to the Patriots. He was released by them. And then we needed him when we needed wide receiver help. So then we signed him last year and then this year. So, and we still need help. Well, actually, it's more of we don't have any production coming from Matt Collins. We have very little coming from Nelson Agholor, even though to me, it seemed like he did better than Alshon Jeffrey in the game against the Bears, just catching wise. And, we have a severe lack of production coming from the wide receiver group, and it's really surprising that it's coming from Alshon. Him being hurt or whatnot, that has a lot, but he played the whole year with a torn labrum or rotator cuff the 2017 season, and you didn't think anything was wrong with him. You know what I mean? If it's still his calf and he's maybe trying to do too much, not looking the ball in when he catches it, and maybe he's just worried about getting hit or trying to move upfield, lack of focus. But, these guys need to focus, and I think one person that could rejuvenate or even give some energy to this wide receiver core, that's definitely Jordan Matthews. He was the one that had all those ideas for when he was with us the 2017 season before he was traded. He was the one that had all the ideas for the celebrations or end zone celebrations. They even said that Jordan Matthews came up with all of that. So I think he's gonna bring some solid wide receiver play, a lot better than Matt Collins. And maybe, just maybe, this can give a spark to Nelson Agholor. Now, what other bit of news out there? It's just AB had his meeting with the NFL today, and, we're definitely not getting him. And, I knew that was a far-fetched signing at this point. I think we could probably still bring in somebody. We can bring in Mike Wallace. He knows our playbook. And maybe just as a security blanket, because that's where Howie, and I've said this in other videos, that's where Howie has dropped the ball. He didn't have anybody or bring in anybody that could take the place, or at least be somewhat serviceable in our offense to move the ball through the air. You know what I mean? So until he brought in Jordan Matthews. There's J.J. Nelson still out there. Torrey Smith said he's not coming out of retirement, and shout out to him. But yeah, he definitely doesn't need to come out of retirement. I'm sure he's good where he's at. So, it's just we're gonna have to bank a lot on these guys, this wide receiver core, and we're gonna have to rely a lot on these running backs and our offensive line to move the ball. And we cannot afford to make any mistakes against the Patriots. But I'll touch on that later. I really kind of wanted to go into on I watched First Take the other day, and Max Kellerman. And thank God for Stephen A. Smith sometimes when he can check Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman has been on this NFC East just hunt against the Eagles. He'll say all this stuff. Oh, they'll catch it for Nick Foles, but then they'll drop it for Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz doesn't get these guys going. He doesn't motivate these guys to do better. That, and then like Stephen A. Smith checked him. And he was just like, they're dropping the balls. And he was like, well, these guys aren't going the extra mile to catch these balls for him. They'll do it for Foles. But, man, anybody that's really watched this team, we'll go back to 2016 with Wentz. Really, the only person that Wentz had in that offense as far as a wide receiver was Jordan Matthews. Dorial Green-Beckham was trash. The ball would hit him directly in his hands and he'd drop it. And Nelson Agholor was trash. He'd shy away. If his confidence was shot, he was so focused on running his routes correctly that he would completely disregard the fact that he had to catch the ball after he broke out of his route. All right? So you have a wide receiver core. Then you have Bryce Treggs. Bryce Treggs cost him, but he couldn't get open, right? So he had no wide receivers except for Jordan Matthews, who he trusted, and then he had to rely on Zach Ertz. Those were his two security blankets, right? And he had nobody. Then we signed Alshon, right? Complete difference in 2017 season. We signed Alshon. He barely drops a ball. Nelson somehow steps up with the help of Mike Groh. Then you have Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith, out of him and Nelson, had probably the most drops. It seemed like he was the most consistent in dropping a ball, where Nelson was shining. You know what I'm saying? So, it's funny to me that 2016, 2017, all these guys are playing for Wentz and they're balling. Everybody's balling. From LeGarrette Blount to, we didn't get Jay till later, but Sproles, Clement was even shining. Like, all these guys, our offensive line was just killing it. Jason Peters is having, like, probably one of the best years he's had, being as old as he is. You know what I'm saying? And, even Wisniewski, who was a backup, stepped up in the left guard role. Like, everybody's play was elevated. But Max is saying that that Wentz can't elevate a team like Foles can. Foles, as we all know, didn't get into the quarterback position, or he didn't get into the starting role until Wentz went down in the Rams game in 2017. Week 13, I believe. So where does he get all this? Because what? Because Foles was able to basically continue on from what Wentz had started and got us to the big game and win it. But let's make no mistake about it. That defense kept us in games enough to where we could win it. If it wasn't for Jalen Mills and his great covering on Julio Jones, and if Matt Ryan was a better quarterback and he had placed that ball where Julio could get it, but I give more credit to Mills than anything, because one, even if Julio catches it, Mills positioned him to where he was landing out of bounds anyway. He boxed him out. So, I mean, if it's not for him, and then you look at Nick Foles with that lucky, it was a terrible throw. He threw it in nothing in the area where no Eagles were around. It was nothing but Falcons. And Keanu Neal, I believe, hit him straight in the chest. He knees it up in the air, and Torrey Smith just happened to be in the area and catches it. It takes skill, it takes motivation, but we also need a little bit of luck. And I think that's something we've been missing too. We have all the skilled players in the world, but we also need that little bit of luck. That helps us win these games. And Nick Foles was absolutely lucky. In the Minnesota game, he balled out. The whole offense balled out. The Super Bowl, the whole offense balled out. But when you get back to Wentz and, then you got Wentz coming off his knee, and he's coming out, and then he injures his back, and probably the third game he was playing. I mean, he didn't look right, and the other guys have regressed. Nelson Aguilar regressed compared to his 2017 season, and Alshon, he stayed mildly consistent as far as, if you're comparing Alshon to his 2017 season, there's probably not that much of a drop off, right? But you can even tell with Alshon, he was a little bit off, but he was still making plays. He was definitely the best wide receiver on our team, right? But we didn't get him back until the Titans game. So, everybody says that a good quarterback elevates his wide receivers, right? Okay, well, there's only so much a person can do. I can sit there and tell somebody you're great, go out there, make a play, ball out, and just grind for the team. You know what I mean? Like, stay on your grind for the team, make a play, and if you don't, no biggie. I'm come back to you next play. We gonna make some plays. We gonna move the ball. I believe in you, right? If you say all that to a person, the person still doesn't elevate themselves, that's on them. That's not on the quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's only so much rah you can do. And if a person just is just terrible, then they're terrible. And Nelson is just in his own head. And Sidney Jones, I'm going on defense a little bit. Sidney Jones, he's the defensive Nelson Aguilar. He doesn't have a lot of confidence because he keeps getting injured. And he has all the talent in the world. Nelson has all the talent in the world, but they can't put it together consistently. So, look at Tom Brady. He has, he hasn't had great receivers or big name receivers, and, he's elevate. That's Tom Brady. Look at Andrew Luck had T.Y. Hilton. At one point, he even had Reggie Wayne, right? Towards the end of his career, but still, Kirk Cousins, did he elevate Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon? No, they were two really good receivers, and they were doing the job. When it was time for them to catch a ball, they caught the dang ball. So I'm so sick of this. Like, if a person, can't elevate a person more than they already try to do or have, if they can't elevate themselves, then that's not on the quarterback. That's just what I believe. Everybody has to do their job. A quarterback has to be able to hit somebody in their hands, and that receiver has to be able to catch it. Point blank and period. So, I'm just so sick and tired of Max, or just anybody in general, like the Foles Society or whatever, or just like people who dog on Wentz. Yes, Wentz should have hit Jeffrey in his hands in the Chicago game. He should have thrown that ball better. Maybe he put a little bit more air under it. But at the same time, it's gotten to a point where even Alshon, you have to question his hands and where he's at mentally at this point in the season. We cannot do that. And you have Cowboys fans like, look at Dak. Dak's throwing the ball up to Amari. And you take Amari out the game, Dak's going to regress. If our receivers were stepping up for Wentz, he'd look just as good, if not better. You know what I'm saying? And, like, I say that because I've been arguing with Cowboys fans on Twitter. And, a lot of people, I understand that our fan base is going to make excuses for Wentz, and the Cowboys fan base is going to make excuses for that. The point, or the fact of the matter is that if you look at what the Cowboys done, and this is really just it's kind of like a gut punch to Howie, if anything. The Cowboys went above and beyond to get talent around Dak. They already had their running back. They didn't have their wide receiver after Dez got injured, or just wasn't right after that little Jones fracture that he had in his foot, right? So they went out and gave a first-round pick to the Raiders for Amari Cooper. What did the Eagles do? No, that's too much. We wanted to give a second-round pick, but we'll give out a third for a person that we're not even going to bring back next year in Golden Tate. Now, Golden Tate did help. He made somewhat of a difference. He definitely made that crucial catch, the go-ahead touchdown against the Bears when Nick Foles was the quarterback. But, Wentz has got to get help from his receivers. Wentz has got to be better at at being a quarterback, and he is making those strides. But his receivers have to help him out. Another thing about Foles, when he talks about elevating, if elevating was the issue, elevating the team of the receivers was really the issue, then Alshon doesn't drop that ball in the playoffs against the Saints. Foles would have been the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. We never would have drafted Wentz. We never would have felt like we had to draft Wentz if it wasn't for Foles going basically 8-8 until that game against the Texans in 2014, where he broke his collarbone, and we were left with Mark Sanchez to cover the next half. Or was it? I'm sorry. Was it? I think we were 4-4 at that point. Not 8 now. I'm sorry. I think we were 4-4 at that point. Nick Foles was the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had his chance. And if it wasn't for Frank Reich, if it wasn't for Doug Peterson, if it wasn't for John DeFilippo, all these offensive minds to get together and find the things that Foles basically enhance his strengths and plays. And that was key. These coaches got together, saw the tape or the footage of him balling out in 2013 when he was with Chip Kelly. They went into that and used all those plays, his strength, to his strength. They worked with his strengths, not with his weaknesses. They tried to limit those as much as possible and called the plays that he was comfortable in executing. And that's why he looked as good as he did. He's going to start in Jacksonville soon, so, people will get to see. He threw a touchdown before he got injured, with the Jags, but, he's going to get his turn. But, there's people already, he's basically in the same situation and he's basically in Wentz's shoes now. Because how he was injured, and Gardner Minshew was playing great for the time he was out, and then now people were like, you should leave Gardner in there. Yeah, grass is always greener, isn't it? So anyway, that's all I really want to say. I didn't really want to make this very long, but I'm just so sick of the arguing about Nick Foles because he was the quarterback when we won the Super Bowl, and Carson Wentz, who's our future. Carson Wentz is a good quarterback. He proved that in the Bears game. He proved that in the Bills game. He's proved it 2017 in the Packers game. You know, and we just got to get everything right on both sides of the ball. Our defense is coming along. You know, we got to stop giving up the big plays, but our defense is coming along. Now it's time for our offense to get right. And if we can get right, start peaking at the most this you know, this last part of the season, we'll definitely be in the playoffs. But we have to keep winning. And Dallas, you know, it's going to be a race between us and Dallas. So, anyway, appreciate you guys listening. Just if you have any comments or whatnot, or if you have any thoughts or opinions about it, just leave your thoughts or opinions in the comment section below. And, you know, I'd love to see what you guys think about it. So, anyway, I'm out. EAGLES Eagles. Nats. What's up? You guys take care. Peace.